Cadets. Welcome to your next lecture, Phase 2 of Star Trek Attack Wing's three-phase cycle, the action phase. In our last lecture, we covered basic ship maneuvering, how to maneuver ships, how to maneuver auxiliary moves, and how to move past and negotiate obstacles, and what constitutes a strike with a vehicle and what does not constitute a strike with a vehicle. That's usually phase 1, you know, your planning and your maneuver phase. Now we're into phase 2, which is the actions phase. Today we're going to be covering off the basic actions. This is a Federation channel, so primarily the ones you can conduct with Federation starships. So we'll talk about cloaking, but very, very rapidly and not in depth. Let's get started. Presented in front of you now are the usual uses of the various actions: target lock, defensive maneuver, sensor ping, battle stations for the factions that are able to conduct this, cloaking, weapons or crew members that are action cards, as well as elite talent cards that fall under the action category. These are all the various types of actions you can conduct during your actions phase. If, for example, you choose to use a target lock, the blue token goes next to the ship placing the lock. The red token goes on the ship that is now target locked. This gives an advantage to the attacking ship. It can use that lock to re-roll a poor attack roll, or it can use its lock to use a weapon system that requires a target lock in order to be used. In that case, a disabled token is then placed on that weapon, and another action is used to reload the tubes. A defensive maneuver tile gives a ship an extra defense dice during the attack phase. So when you roll attack or defense dice, you can choose to use this token to dodge a potential hit from an attacking ship. Moving down, the sensor ping action. This action negates one of the defensive dice that a ship that you are attacking is able to roll to defend against your attack. Battle stations is a very handy action. If you're attacking, you can choose to use this to turn all of your battle station dice into hits, or you can wait for your defensive phase and you can choose to use this to make all of your battle stations dice defensive points. So it's really up to the commander whether or not they want to use this for offensive or defensive actions, depending on the situation you're in. We already talked about weapons. So if you use your target lock, you can fire photon torpedoes, which are then disabled, and then you can wait till your next turn to use your action to disable the torpedoes, making them available for your next time you set up a target lock, and then you fire again. You see there's a little bit of time, there's a risk versus reward factor to using photon torpedoes, because it takes one action to put the target lock on, then you fire them, another action to disable them, and then a third action to get a second target lock to fire them again. It can get a tad tedious at times. And then you have elite talents or special crew member cards that have the action up here. This counts as one of your action for that move. Some captain's cards, such as the Captain Stu card, allow you to use more than one action at a time. However, that'll come down to your build. But in this case, instead of any of these actions, you can perform the engage, which in this case allows you to move an extra green maneuver on after your initial maneuver has been completed. So those are the usual actions that you will see a Federation ship use. And just because only a fool fails to study his enemy, we have the cloaking action. Placed next to a ship, it gives that ship a significant defensive bonus, and I believe negates the ability for attacking ships to target lock. Once that ship fires, however, though, cloak goes red, everybody knows where it is, and you lose certain advantages on a red cloak. Those are the standard actions available to a player during Star Trek Attack Wing, the board game. So now that we've covered off what the various types of actions are, we're going to do a quick example of their use during combat. So when the maneuver phase ends, ships move into place, it's now the Nishizumi's action phase. So for the first example, they're going to do a target lock. So anywhere 360 degrees around the ship is open for target lock. You do a quick range check, boom. It is well within range 3. I am able to target lock that ship. So I place the blue next to the Nishizumi and the red next to the ship that I am target locking. So that ship is now target locked. We would move on to the third phase, combat. We'll cover that in a later lecture. But because I'm using the Captain Stu card and I have the ability to perform 2 actions per round of any kind, for the purpose of this lecture, I'm also going to battle stations on the Nishizumi. So right now I have 2 actions. So we would move on to phase 3, which is combat, and we'll cover this in greater detail during the combat lecture. But just so you can see how these actions affect play, we roll a dice. I have 2 hits and 2 battle stations. I'm going to use my battle station token, which takes that action away, and that turns those into hits, meaning I got 4 hits on the enemy vessel. If, let's say, I had rolled a blank there, and it behooves me to do so, I can use my target lock to turn that into a hit, or pardon me, to re-roll that, which ironically was a blank again, but in theory it could have been a critical or another hit, bringing me back up to 4 again. That's how target lock and that's how battle stations work. As well, I can target lock this enemy ship, and we move into phase 3, which is combat. I can choose to use my photon torpedoes to roll 5 dice instead of 4 on the enemy ship. Just keep in mind, once that happens, those torpedoes are disabled and the target lock automatically goes away. If I had used the sensor ping on the enemy vessel, what would happen here is the enemy vessel has 2 defensive dice. So if I had rolled my 4 attack dice against him, which was a really bad roll, I got 1 hit. He has 2 defensive dice to use against me. If I choose to use this, he's forced to take one of those dice away and only roll 1, which was a dodge, so he would have been safe from that attack anyway. Well played, sir. Well played. Then we move to the third type of action that we discussed, which is offensive maneuver. Pardon me, fourth. You know what I mean, pardon me. Defensive maneuvers. So, if you place a defensive maneuver tile, the enemy ship shoots at me. He has 3 attack dice he can shoot at me with. 2 hits, 1 a critical. I have 2 defensive dice at my disposal, so I roll them. I have 1 dodge. If I choose to use my defensive token, however, that automatically becomes a dodge, negating both of those hits, and I take no damage. Do you see how there's versatility and a little bit of strategy employed in how you use your various actions? As well, unlike the Federation, Romulan Empire has access to cloning technology, but we'll cover that in a different lecture. So, any questions on the standard playing actions? If you do, make sure you write them down in the comments. Other uses for actions. I can use an action now on the next turn to disable my proton torpedoes, reload the torpedo tubes. I now have those weapons available to me again. Or I can use my engage. And an example of how engage would work is if I perform a green maneuver, let's say in this case, all ahead 2. I might have a collision I have to deal with. All ahead 2. I can now use my action, instead of any of these, use my action to perform a second green maneuver. In this case, I'm going to do turn because I'm concerned that I'm going to have a collision. And goodness knows I don't want to smash my Nishizumi into somebody in front of my entire class like this. Aha, away it flies. Avoiding a collision, safe to fight another day. That is the power available to you provided by your various actions. So are there any further questions on actions? Again, this is a Federation channel, so a lot of what I described is going to be geared towards aiding a Federation player. So battle station sensor ping, defensive maneuvers, how to disable, undisable, disable ship components, and the use of a target lock. But just remember the little things. 1 action per turn, unless you have a card that allows you to do more than 1 action, or you have a card that automatically grants you an action. For example, the USS Jaeger default comes with an ability that negates the need to disable photon torpedoes, meaning you don't have to spend an action to reload it. Or a fleet flagship card automatically grants a battle stations card to the ship designated as the flagship, which, as you can see from my little example that we did here, can be a huge tactical advantage. So, if there are no more questions on the actions phase, if you do have a question that you don't want brought up in a public forum, such as the classroom, you can add it down in the comments or send me a subspace message. And I believe you guys have a period in the gymnasium playing space polo next. So I want you to head back to your dorms and get into your space polo suits. Having said that, don't forget about the transport seminar we're having on Friday. It's going to be something you don't want to miss. Class dismissed.